Ready to go? We are now officially recording. So welcome everyone. Thank you for attending the 2 o'clock public forum. While there are only 4 of you, that's great. That's better than 1 or 2. So at least hopefully we'll have a lively discussion as we go through a bunch of things. Hopefully you saw when you registered the sheet, again, this is not a debate. This is really just our chance to pose some questions and listen to what you guys think. Because we're using Zoom, just to let you know, the chat function is not working, but the Q&A function is working. And obviously, as we move forward, we're going to begin by using the raised hand function to sort of participate. But if you know this group stays small and everybody's well behaved, we'll turn off the mute thing and allow everybody to speak freely. Before we kick off the presentation and everything else, let's run a little video to show you how to use the raised hand function.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
Great, so that's really how things are going to work. So we'll start with the raised hand and then we'll go. So let's kick this off with a brief presentation that we put together just to sort of set the stage for what we're really looking to explore this afternoon. So this is obviously Lakeforest Mall on your screen now. All told, including the stormwater management ponds, it's a little over 100 acres. And this interior portion is over 80 acres. The yellow circles where the existing transit center, which is really more of a covered bus shelter, is located. And the blue dots are the points of entry and exit from the mall site. So a little background, within a half mile of Lakeforest Mall, there's almost 7,000 residential units with almost 16,000 people living there, just within a half mile of the mall. Also within a half mile of the mall, you know, over 1.5 million square feet of general and medical office, and almost 1.5 million square feet of retail and restaurant, and 400,000 approximately, you know, almost 400,000 of industrial storage and warehouse. So there's a lot going on just within a half mile, not including the mall itself. So as we approach this, you know, some of the backdrop that we as staff begin to think about is that the city is forecast to add 20,000 new residents for almost 90,000 people by 2045. You know, when you think about it, it's only 25 years off. The city will need between, over 600,000 to 9,000 additional housing units to meet that growth. And it's forecast to add approximately 20,000 new jobs. So this is all the background that we're sort of thinking about, because opportunities to meet this, are few and far between. We're really looking at redevelopment. So Lakeforest is something unique. And we also noticed that retail is and will remain oversupplied. We began to see this even before the pandemic, the challenges with retail. So as I mentioned, Lakeforest offers a unique opportunity. There's so many different things that could occur here in a redevelopment should it not remain a mall, from single family neighborhoods to dense urban mix. I mean, this is a snapshot of a section in Manhattan, more suburban mixed use to urban mixed use. This is a section of Washington, D.C. So you can see within the limits of really that 88 plus acres that we're talking about, a lot of different things can occur. So before we move on to the questions, what is our goal? So the city's endeavoring on a master plan. And this master plan, given the times that we're in, we're not going to get a plan that's a design plan. So you're not going to look at something that says, oh, so they're going to put this here and it's going to be this tall and it's going to have this, or we're going to have this many residential units on this block and this is what the road's going to look like. The end product of this effort, this master plan, is more of a higher level look. It's really going to establish the vision that the city wants for a redevelopment and express elements that it wants included in a redevelopment, and potentially, conversely, may express elements we don't want to see in a redevelopment. So where some master plans that you folks may have noticed, says this block will have 300 units and 50,000 square feet of retail. This could be more along the lines that the predominant form of residential should be apartments, so it's more broader things without actually putting it somewhere within this 80-acre circle. So that's sort of the backdrop. Again, as you probably saw, we're going to go into some questions, as I mentioned, to start. When I put the question out, this is an open dialogue. I want to hear from everyone. Use the raise hand function. You'll be unmuted. And again, if this becomes a lively discussion and everybody's well behaved, we'll unmute everyone and then you can just talk. So with the first question, which of the following do you value most for a Lakeforest redevelopment? Is it increased housing opportunities, increased employment opportunities, established connectivity with and amenities for the surrounding neighborhoods, or is there some other thing that's not on here that you think is a keystone of any Lakeforest redevelopment? And with that, I will turn it to our guests. And we can unmute Trudy Schwartz. Hey, I think I've met you before.
Am I on?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
I think a combination of A and B
Okay.
with some parks, small parks in between.
Okay. Before we begin to further explore, anybody else have some initial thoughts? I know there's 3 others out there. Excellent. So Kirk, dealer's choice, whoever you want to go first.
Can you hear me? Yep. Yeah, I agree with the previous speaker. A mixed housing and employment would be good just because it's currently a mall. People are used to that. And we need something close to that area that's more of a downtown Crown type of feel that's starting to go to. But, I'm concerned about the overcapacity of the school situations. And so a combination of A, B, and C would probably be best. I don't know if a school type of environment could fit in there, but I think that's something that probably should be considered, considering we're looking for additional space for these students.
Okay. Anybody else? I thought I saw a 3rd hand raised at one point. If not, let's sort of expand on, in particular, what Tina brought up. So for the group, if we're talking about mixed use, before we get into some of the nuanced thoughts about jobs and housing, what is the panel's opinion? We can't definitively state at this point, we don't have a plan or anything, but if residential comes in and it is such that it creates a lot of students, at the master plan level for what we do, should we make accommodations that a potential school site, if needed, should be facilitated on this site? Again, it's 80 acres. But obviously, real close by, and I will go back real fast to show you, there is an existing elementary school here, right here. And the Montgomery Village Master Plan has master planned an additional middle school. So again, I think before we start exploring other options, what are the group's thoughts about, should there be some sort of accommodation of a school site if it's shown to be needed? I see somebody has raised a hand. If you could introduce yourself when you get unmuted.
Am I unmuted now? Hello,
Yes.
I'm Richie Vicente. I'm the president of the Rotary Club Gaithersburg.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you as well. Thank you so much for this presentation. I think there's schools projects going on now and there's existing schools. I was thinking on that area to be some sort of the activities for the families and the kids, like the lady earlier said, like kind of like the Rio atmosphere, a destination for all of those neighborhoods for activities. There's a good, really nice lakes around there as well, around the Lakeforest Mall. Maybe we can capitalize that, connect that to be a destination, because if you look at Rios, if you look at the people that goes to Rio, we're attracted to water, and especially if there's like, you know, some sort of fountain or something like that that's going on, family type of, you know, picnic area and all that good stuff, and together
Excellent.
with some housing, and of course that will improve some employments as well if we have some businesses around it too.
Okay. Kirk, I see Tina's raised her hand.
Yeah, this is Tina again. I totally agree with that. You know, on the Rio and downtown Crown side, that's on the opposite side of Gaithersburg almost, and then you got the Kentlands, which is a little bit further away. But I don't feel like there's anything on the Lakeforest side that the Montgomery Village community and even Old Town Gaithersburg communities can, you know, of course they can go to the Rio and the downtown Crown, but nothing that's walkable. So I think something to that effect would be beneficial for economic development, as well as bringing in the additional people that are expected to flood into this area. But talking about the school, the elementary school that you mentioned in that previous, that if it's the right school that I'm thinking of, is it Stedwick? It's small, I think. I think
South Lake, I think.
South Lake. Yeah, I know it started with an S. I think it's small, and I don't know that it would accommodate. And I also think it would need to be updated or something like that. So, you know, if you're thinking about the number of people that are expected to come in, I think you would have to almost redo that school.
Okay. Excellent. So Tina, I want to sort of jump before we jump back to Trudy. So as we're beginning to talk about, we're hearing about, everybody's saying A and B are important. I'd like to do a little bit of a deeper dive to get a sense of what the group is thinking when they actually talk about this. So, again, we said up front, we're over retailed as it is. As you guys have pointed out, we have a Rio, we have a Crown, we have a Kentlands. What are the employment niches, or what is the niche that a Lakeforest redevelopment could fill? And as we talk about housing, pardon me, what sort of housing are we thinking about? Are you guys envisioning density here? A lot of the discussions that we've had with other focus groups, it's great to have the amenities and the park space and, potentially a school, but what are those serving? Are we looking at, townhomes here? Are we looking at apartments? Are we looking at garden style apartments? So I'd really like to sort of flesh out, when you guys speak of A and B, where everybody's brain is in relation to that. So once again, I'll open up the floor. And Trudy, you had your hand up first, so if you're ready to chime in.
Well, I just wanted to chime in on the last part, and then I'll answer that question. This area really needs a gathering space. If it's something simple like the Old Town Park, but an area where people can gather, and that was one of the good things about Lakeforest Mall, is it had the gathering court area for festival, small celebrations and things like that. As far as housing, I think a combination between townhouse and multifamily. It would be really great if there's a market for condominiums with 3-bedroom housing for families, either in the multifamily or in the multifamily condos.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts? I see Rich has raised his hand. You know what, Kirk? I think with this small group, we can just unmute people altogether. As long as everybody behaves, don't make us lock you down. We're letting the hounds loose.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I think it's, the townhouse type of housing. And then I agree with the multifamily as well, that can serve from, maybe a single, an individual to up to a 3-bedroom. Because there's a lot of coming back to Montgomery County, and they wanted to be in the area where there's some gathering spaces and activities for their kids, and that's nearby to school. Because yeah, like I agree with Trudy, the Lakeforest Mall, it's really in the center of it all. And as you can tell on the map that you showed earlier, it's right in the heart of it, of Gaithersburg.
Great. So, Rich, while I have you to build off that, so if we bring in all this housing and we have some gathering spaces, there should be some other uses. So, what do you envision potentially as these employment opportunities or other uses? And let's keep in mind, within a half mile, we already have 3 shopping centers. There's already 2 grocery stores nearby. So, what are the other things besides, some open space, the green space, which is obviously great, and some housing? What are some other things that should you envision for a redeveloped Lakeforest Mall?
I believe when we had the Trader Joe's right on the shopping center, where now it's Patel Farmers Market, the traffic was heavy, and it, for some reason, like every other cultural and yeah, multicultural grocery stores in the area are very busy at the same time. And like, for example, I guess the type, individuals are changing towards, organic items, and a lot of grocery stores surrounding that area, they have a portion of organic, but not a lot of the organic. So on the grocery store, I would say similar as Trader Joe's, because it's been, they were there for a long time, and then they're gone, and then we have to travel miles away to go to the next one. And then for the mix of, I'm not sure what's the mix on the other shopping centers. I know they have a quick stop items and places and convenience stores, but I don't know, maybe, I was thinking of, if you look at Rio, who caters the gathering spaces, on an ice cream shop, a coffee shop, maybe a sandwich place, a wine tasting place for adults, and those kind of things. It could be a sporting place, because we used to have what was that, sporting goods?
Sports Authority?
Sports Authority. Thank you, Trudy. And now we don't have it. We don't have one. Even just as small as the one in Kentlands, there's a shoe store that actually participates in a lot of running activities in the area.
Have they closed? Fleet something?
I'm not sure if they've closed.
So I've got where you're going, Rich. But let me rephrase this some way. So you have 80 acres. Everybody said, for the most part, they want to see employment opportunities. I'm hearing a small shop here, a small shop there. We already know retail was declining. We know we have lots of other retail already in the city. How do you put a spin on Lakeforest redevelopment? Again, I guess the question is, do you really need another Foot Locker over here? Or are you setting yourselves up? And if we're looking for jobs, right now I'm hearing a lot of, small scale retail that serves the residential. So are you envisioning, or is the group envisioning this being predominantly residential? So I'm trying to get a sense from you guys, what is the mix of percentage wise of the housing opportunities versus employment opportunities? And when you speak of employment opportunities, are you limiting your focus solely to minimum wage retail jobs?
My question is kind of to Tom, is how is the office market? Is the office market still very low right now?
Nice to hear your voice, Trudy. I would say that our office market is in flux. Thankfully, we have not yet spiked to levels that other communities have seen. We're up, vacancy meaning is still up by several points compared to where we were in the spring. We are seeing a few things in the market. We're seeing our strongest office properties. You already know where those are down in our Class A sectors are still performing well. Our biotech and our flex properties are also performing well. And our B and C assets are struggling, and we anticipate them continuing to struggle and potentially decline. If that answers your question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that is in some of the literature is also talks about light industrial, such as a brewery or, you know, a lot of this is specialty shops.
Mm-hmm.
What seems, it's something that you can't really get on Amazon.
So Trudy, to build off that, a lot of the
Employment
focus groups and other ones have discussed that experiential uses a lot of people envision as being important for this redevelopment. You know, so such of the things, or trying to bring in what we refer to as integrated light manufacturing. I guess the question for the group is, you know, is it time, as it has historically been applied in the city of Gaithersburg, that mixed use should encompass more than just, you know, ground level retail with, you know, residential above? Is it time to expand the boundaries of what mixed use can incorporate?
Yeah, I think so. On the mixed use standpoint, I think that's something that we should explore. Because, yeah, although, I mean, surrounding area, there's a lot of office spaces and things like that, but there's a lot of tech companies out in Virginia, and the employees living here in Gaithersburg or Germantown. And sometimes and I'm meeting a lot of small businesses as well, that they can't run or they can hold a meeting in their home. So probably I don't think any shared office space type of setting in Gaithersburg. I think it's more of condos, leases, and office spaces on the 702 Russell Avenue area, and then condos on Russell Avenue toward the professional or medical center across Costco. But there's no there's no shared office space where it's a lot cheaper for a one-man tech shop or something like that they can lease for.
No, great. That's sort of where we're going. I think we all have a sense that even before the pandemic, the world had begun changing, but the pandemic has sort of accelerated some things, and some of the things related to the pandemic are probably likely to stay in place. So that's what we sort of want to explore, because obviously any master plan, we want a redevelopment that's going to be successful. So that's sort of, you know, sort of where we're nipping at. So Trudy's idea, you know, the maker's economy is something that we really don't find in some of our other shopping centers. A question that we've put out to various focus groups and in the various surveys is, for this Lakeforest development, do you have concerns that it may cannibalize or poach from other areas in the city? So what I mean by that is, you know, if you want, you know, Shop A, and Shop A is currently, you know, in the Kentlands, or, you know, on you know, over near West Riding, it, you know, if it comes over here, what are you leaving in its wake? You know, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul? Is that a concern of anybody on the panel?
For me, it is a concern because we wanted to give a variety of options for our residences. So I think if we're gonna be mindful of what is going on at the Rio, at the Crown, yeah, we should be mindful of those so that we don't duplicate. Because yeah,
Great.
we don't
Anybody
want to
else have
rob.
any thoughts?
You know,
Go ahead,
go
Trudy.
ahead.
Go ahead, Tina.
I was just gonna say, I feel the same way. I think Gaithersburg is small enough that, you know, you would inhibit some of the same types of businesses. But one thing, you know, I've lived here for 20 years, I think. And one thing I really appreciate about the city of Gaithersburg is that it has that small town feel, but it still has the amenities and the shops and the, you know, types of things that economic development that you look for. And so I'd hate to see it go towards exclusively office space and office buildings. I think it would be good to keep that somehow small town feel with, I think Trudy said, you know, the breweries and things like that, amenities that people want within walking distance to where they're living, and at the same time have some space to spread out, and not just office buildings and office space like a downtown DC or Manhattan.
Oh, gotcha. So let me put this while I see at least three of you on my screen. Do you guys have any opinions, you know, introducing maybe non-traditional uses such as stuff that's been brought up by other focus groups and the like is, you know, maybe for lack of a better term, community-based uses. So a community center, or some people have brought up, you know, job training centers or incubators or things like this. So it's not really retail in the traditional sense, and it's not necessarily, you know, like a medical office or a business office. It's more these quasi-civic uses. Do you guys have any opinions on that? You know, the appropriateness of that in a redevelopment?
Is with the job training center over in Old Town, that's Montgomery College, is there things that they would like to do that could be piggybacked onto what's already there, but in a different location?
That's a possibility.
That's true. That building right there on Summit, I don't know what's the capacity on that or what else is happening. It's been very quiet there. Perhaps do the incubator there and do something else. Now, a community facility, like a facility that the community could use in addition to the library, but the space in the library, I think it can only hold like a small type of gathering. I think that would be an option for, since we are a very diverse community, I think it would be an option for a nice community and diversity festivals type of thing.
Great, 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 great.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea considering Gaithersburg, one of the most diverse cities in America. You know, maybe have like a diversity center
Right?
where it's
Yeah.
used for multiple. I mean, I think in the city, I'm a Native American, and in the city of
Mhm.
Rockville, they've actually used part of their right there in downtown Rockville. There was a basement type of thing where we had a powwow type of thing, and we've had one over here at Lower Park, but it kind of felt awkward because it was like a gymnasium. So if there was
Mhm.
something that could be, you know, multicultural center where it's big enough for different groups, I think that would be amazing in this city.
I mean, one thing, I'm not sure that it would be allowed, but something that could be that church groups could use and then community people could use for a gathering place, you know, a small auditorium.
Yeah.
And you could have a lot of different groups going in and out. It's similar to what Casey Community Center is. It caters to a lot of different groups, multifaceted groups, but something a little bit that would have larger seating area.
Yeah.
You bring up an interesting point, Trudy, in that, you know, since the Kentlands with these larger developments, holistic developments that have come in, not since the Kentlands have we really planned in any, for lack of a better term, churches or faith-based things. Is that something that should be just talked about in the master plan? The accommodation of something like this, or should it be limited to, the non-sectarian, community center, civic use type things that we were just discussing?
I think non-sectarian.
Non-sectarian. I agree, Tina.
We have a lot of churches in this area. You go down 355 and there's one right after the other. And they're all different, denominations. And I think that's great. And I think they kind of have space that they need for their communities. But non-sectarian in that area would be a distinguished space for that.
Great. No,
well, it's interesting. There are a lot of churches that don't have buildings in the area, and they're always looking for space. I'm not sure what they're doing since the schools are closed, but there's a lot of the schools are utilized by churches on the weekends.
They're actually leasing those vacant warehouses at the air park or any other places. That's what's going on in those churches. So
okay.
So again, as we get closer to moving on to question 2, sort of what I'm hearing from the group is maybe a mix of housing. I really would like to sort of explore, do you see it as being dense, not dense? But I'm hearing, townhomes, multifamily options are great. Green space is very important, including gathering spaces. The incorporation of some of these, maybe for lack of a term, non-traditional civic uses, be it, educational based or community facilities or something, would be nice to see here. On the employment side, sounds like you guys are a little hesitant about office. You recognize, if you're going to have housing, some, retail will be needed here, but maybe it's time to explore some additional sectors, be it, Trudy mentioned, the makers economy, the brewers, things like that. Rich, I think, mentioned, the medical or the biomed industry. So it's looking there. I know we had some people talking about, some of the newfangled manufacturing, not your old traditional steel mills, but again, what we sort of refer to as integrated light manufacturing. So is that sort of encompassing, I guess, where the panel's head is?
There's no thumbs up button.
Okay.
You did a great job on summarizing it.
So before we move on then to question 2, one other facet here that I'd sort of like to explore with you guys. So we've sort of laid out from your guys' vision of what you think Lakeforest redevelopment. What do you see as, and, to follow up on Tina's thing, it sounds like, if it becomes evident that a school should be needed, some land should be set aside for that. So the other question is the transit center. So the transit center that's there now, just so everyone knows, basically serves 7 different ride-on routes and links up county with down county. It's also foreseen to be the hub that serves the future Maryland 355 bus rapid transit system. And it's currently a terminus point for the 355 Flash that's going on, that express bus that goes from here to Bethesda. So my question is, given that, what do you guys see as the role for the transit center? Should it be a more robust transit center? Should it be relocated? Should it be integrated into this development or should it be kept off to the side? I sort of want to, obviously, transportation has been an important facet for a diverse amount of focus groups. So I'd sort of like to hear from this panel what your thoughts are on the transit center.
I think the mass transit center have to stay there, and I would say a little bit of cosmetic work to make it.
Well, right now it's just an open.
Yeah.
It's just an open stop. I think it's a transit center in name only. It really
name
doesn't
only.
reflect.
And it occupies the it is only 2 lanes and a little bit of curve towards the parking. So I think a little bit of that, and much of the kind of like the safety. So kind of, I guess, bring it in out of the road, because sometimes when back then when I was a kid and riding the bus going to my work, I when the buses comes in all at the same time, I'm riding in the middle of the road. And there's incoming traffic, one lane only on the left side. It was yeah, it was crazy. It gets really, really crowded.
Yeah,
Tina, I see you just unmuted. Do you have any thoughts there, my friend?
it does, and I agree with Rich. Can I call you Rich? Sorry. I agree with that. In that, I also feel like I've been over there so many times and have seen some of the retired community walking out in there, and I get extremely nervous because there's so much traffic and there's so little space, and then they're trying to cross that street that I just think maybe a different location for it would be better. I just sometimes I worry because of the how many buses and cars and everything that are over there, and then there's just a lot of people too.
Oh, I totally agree. You know, the layout of that Lost Knife
Yeah.
Odenhall intersection is very
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
But so I'm hearing from you guys potential relocation. What about but from the upgrade standpoint? Do you still see it as, you know, just a glorified shelter, or do you guys potentially see that as something maybe not to the scope and scale of Union Station, but something
No.
more than, again, just you know, a bench with a roof over top of it?
I think a cover and have is it powered by solar now, the lights on that
I'm not sure, my friend.
owning? I'm not 100% sure, but we can. I've seen what the county did in Silver Spring. um uh it looks futuristic, but because of the solar panels on the top too. So I think a roof over it. The awning is good, but when it rains and when it pours, everybody in there and rides the bus wet, soaking wet. So I would say, you know, put a roof.
Yeah, I definitely say a redesign as well.
Mhm.
Does this space include, you know, where the Roy Rogers and that whole shopping district is, or just in the Lake Forest section?
This is just for the Lake Forest. That's actually over in the county, Tina.
Okay. Yeah, I think it should be redesigned. I just asked that because if it could even be you know, across the street and
But
redesigned.
hey, you know, this is why we're open to ideas. So again, you know, if the panel, you know, want to, you know, if you know, we're accepting comments. So if you think, hey, maybe we should be working with the county to move it off Lake Forest altogether, you know, I'm open. You know, we're not casting judgment. We're here to listen.
I think that it definitely needs to be enhanced just for use all during the years, especially during inclement weather such as today. And I go back and forth about moving it more into the center, but the drawback is that you have a lot of employees, I think, from Asbury that utilize it. And so having it more into the middle of the Lake Forest space takes it further away and makes a longer walk, and maybe less people would use it that way.
Well, do you guys view a function that if it moves, I mean, because it gets, so albeit right now during the pandemic, mass transit ridership's down across the board. But let's go, you know, pre-pandemic, and let's assume eventually this pandemic will end, so mass transit will come back. Is the key to relocating this to maintain the success, you know, ensuring that there's good, for lack of a term, bicycle pedestrian connectivity to the surrounding areas?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. I was hoping
To kick it off.
Yeah.
there'd be a response.
That's the bike stores in Muddy Branch was very busy, and I've seen an increase on the bikers on the road. So definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about the transit center, we've talked about schools, we've talked about the housing, we've talked about the jobs and what sort of commercial uses, we've talked about the parks. So we have a pretty good idea, essentially, what a redevelopment. So as we move to question 2, let's do a little deeper dive from a different perspective. So it's, in what ways can a Lakeforest redevelopment support social equity, diversity, and sustainability efforts? And I know Tina had touched on this with one of her answers, but maybe let's look at all the various facets that we talked about. Is there some way that a transportation facet in redevelopment can promote these, or in housing, or in jobs, or in amenities? So, obviously, if you're ready to answer, I'm ready to listen, but this is sort of a meaty question. So if you want to take a couple minutes to think about it, I understand.
I'm a supplier diversity liaison for my employer, PNC. So this is dear and near to my heart. I think if we're going to be redeveloping this, we should look into giving an equal opportunity to bid for all of the 6 segments of our diversity. The minority owned, the veteran owned, military owned, the Native American owned businesses, LGBTQ owned businesses. Everybody should be able to bid on some of the suppliers for the developer, or anything that this redevelopment needed.
So my friend, how would you incorporate that into a master plan? So again, we're establishing, a high level look. I'm not disputing what you're saying. It's just a lot of times, that's the independent developer, and what the market will bear. How does the city express these, or is there some other way in the discussion of uses that we can promote these things?
Yeah, the multi-use facility that we were, Trudy, Anne, is it Anne? I forgot her name.
Tina.
And I were talking about, something that those diversity segments will be able to share. So if it's, because this month is the November is Native American Heritage and History Month. And there's, we should be able to have a place to, besides the city hall, of course, or to have a larger space to gather and talk about those things. And of course we have, it's just, there's a lot of things that's in Gaithersburg, and the diversity group is just, it's amazing to see it. It's so healthy and it's so vibrant, and I think we just need to capitalize on that and have them have a space where, it could be that one area with the green area that we have some sort of commemorative something going on there, a fountain or something like that can be dedicated to the diversity, those kind of things.
Tina, I see you're unmuted. What do you have, my friend?
Yeah, I agree with that. When in Lakeforest too, that center core area that was used a lot for different diverse events, I think that was great. And, if there's a possibility to have an indoor space, that's good. But to have an outdoor space to appreciate the nature of things, I tend to like that too. So if there's a way that we could, have that space and allow it to be used for particular functions that Gaithersburg does, we just support diversity in this city so well. And to have a dedicated space that people can use, people can share, I think it would be great. And I would like to see an outdoor space for that as well as an indoor space, but I don't know if that's feasible.
No, hey, we're taking ideas. Before I jump to Trudy, let me throw something out to the group, because this may help frame Trudy's answers too. What we talked about earlier, a diversity of jobs. We talked about incubators, some potentially some job training stuff, and the variety of housing. Can those things actually facilitate social equity and diversity?
I was thinking for social equity, the importance to me is making sure it is a very walkable community, that there are places such as, pathways around whatever stormwater management facilities are constructed, that every person can be out and about with that at an equal, rather than, of course, an automobile-based
Mm-hmm.
facility. Ask your question again, Rob.
So where I was going
Housing.
is,
I
some
think
of
that-
this, but is a diversity in housing stock and type. So essentially,
I see.
addressing multiple price points, or the diversity in jobs,
see.
or these other civic things. An emphasis on those. Do those actions in and of themselves create a more equitable and diverse environment?
I think if you're utilizing some sort of housing waivers, just to as a term, to allow for different economic levels of people to live in that would certainly assist, as long as it's, they're not all grouped together in one corner. They need
Mhm.
spread out equally around the development.
Well, I know Rich had mentioned with the apartments that he thought, they should serve everything from, efficiencies to 3 bedrooms. So by inference, you're talking about, potentially serving, retirees or people just starting out to families. So again, does this promote equity and diversity?
I think so. I think on what we talked about so far. I
Okay.
think.
So again, if we sort of follow this panel's viewpoint on redevelopment, do you guys feel comfortable that in some ways, not to put words in your mouth, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that you're sort of creating a diverse mixed income community that's all integrated together? So to Trudy's point, it doesn't feel like, well, you can tell those are the cheaper homes and those are the wealthier,
Right.
that you're creating something that's more of a mix, and from an employment standpoint, that there's multiple opportunities, that essentially, if you need to have that hourly wage job, it's there, but maybe there's a better job, an ability to grow into a better job. Is that fair to say from the panel?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, good.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Again,
Tina, are you with everybody else, or are you holding out?
me, Tina?
Yeah.
Oh, I said yes. I said you captured it well.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, this is being recorded, so I want to make sure everybody has their voice. So we've talked about now the development. We've talked about some of these social issues that are very important. So the third question that I have, that I always ask people, so I think we sort of laid out what a successful redevelopment project encompasses for this panel. Now the question is, how long would you wait to achieve the success? And there's some subsets to this that we've put out to the various groups. Not only is, how long should it take, but when should we start seeing traction? When will you personally grow impatient? And, is there a point in time that it gets to a certain time limit where it's time to either relook at the master plan, or, just, in some ways forego certain aspects of the greater vision to take a near term or an immediate win? So this is sort of a loaded question. I understand that, but again, so threefold. How long before something, we should expect to see something start? How long should we wait to see it come to conclusion? And how long within that spectrum are you willing to wait?
Can I go back to question number 2 just real quick?
Sure.
What I thought was some of the things that we discussed really need to be programmed, to incorporate, have banners if it's Native American month, or if it's African American, just so things are programmed so that they keep going, which I think would, require input either from a management person or group of the development or the city.
Yeah, Trudy, I agree with that. You know, some people may realize that it's a certain month for a certain group of people, but others may not. So if you have banners or you have flags that are representative of those groups so that
Mhm.
they can be recognized um, at the appropriate times, I think that's amazing. You know, and that's one of the things I envisioned as we talked about the diversity section is just to see, you know, a representative flag of a certain group is the way
Mhm.
to go.
So from the master plan perspective, again, we can't say, hey, promote this every month, but it's more, you know, set up banners is not really a master plan, but it's really more expressing the idea that any redevelopment should actually engage and promote, you know, these
Mhm.
activities that promote diversity. Is that safe to say?
Excellent.
Okay. So again, going back to question 3, if you guys are ready to jump forward. Any thoughts? Again, I'm asking. How long are you going to wait to see something start? How long do you think the whole thing will start? And when are you going to be fed up and want to scrap the whole effort?
You know, I don't know if I'm trying to figure out that Watkins Mill project that took, I think, 5 years or something. It feels like it's 5 years, but it may be less. Tom, you can keep me honest here. I forgot how long it took.
It took a long time. I've been here 17 years, and one of my first projects was talking about Watkins Mill. So to
Yeah.
lend you guys some context, Crown Farm, which you all know, it was purchased, it actually began in 2006, was purchased out of bankruptcy in 2010.
Mhm.
And here we are 10 years later, and we still have a school to build. Only Neighborhood 3 is just now getting started. And we still have an empty pad site in Neighborhood 1, and that's 10 years in.
Mhm.
You know, Kentlands obviously took a number of years. Watkins Mill Town Center, you know, they only completed since 2005 the residential portion and have not moved forward with any of the commercial core, and that's 15 years. So these larger projects take time. From a master plan perspective, the Kentlands Commercial District Master Plan was in place 10 years before the first sketch plan came in, you know, in accordance with that. So if that helps, you know, for you to think about timelines for things, you know,
Yeah.
those are some background.
With those timelines, it's kind of hard now to think of how is this gonna come up. Gosh.
So maybe the easier thing is
It's-
instead of thinking the end, so again, we're talking about the mall. We know, as was mentioned, you know, there's, you know, there is some vacancy in the core. We know 3 of the anchors have closed. I can tell you some of the other focus groups, the concern was waiting too long to the
Mhm.
point where you just have, you know, an empty, blighted structure sitting out there for a long time. Others, you know, the others' concern was if you wait too long in order to avoid that blight, they'll begin backfilling it with a long-term lease. So, you know, you could get something that fills in one of the, you know, you could have the largest dollar store on the Eastern Seaboard for 10 years, you know, which will push the plan. So if that, again, helps you sort of frame, you know, the near-term issue.
I'd hate to see it be, you know, just a structure. So if you can see movement, I think that's helpful. Uh, at least within 10 years, it sounds like we may not see anything before that. Especially with the crown, you can see movement. While you've only seen bits and pieces, you can see the continual growth of that area.
So not to try to sway the panel, because that is, as I said, my job is to listen to you guys, but to help. This may help in the discussion. A lot of the focus groups and other panels that we've spoken to, it was almost uniform in saying they would like to see some sort of positive movement within 3 to 5 years. Does that sound realistic to this panel?
Yeah.
That sounds realistic. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And for this, so, you know, again, just to try to prod you, what could that encompass? Because again, various focus groups have said, you know, that action can be, for some, it could be as simple as, you know, demolition of an empty anchor. For others, it could be, carving out and starting to build the path network. For others, it was a more robust, first, plan to come in. Do you guys have any thoughts, what you would want to see within the 3 to 5 years? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. You didn't expect this to come out, but this is the role of these forums.
I think for the first 3 to 5 years, I would expect a drawing of what to expect, number one, and then the second part would be let's say if a green space on a possible place area or a portion of it would be starting to carve out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I expect a structure of a building or something? I don't expect that, but at least something that's moving along, and then that's awaiting for for that structure to come up. Those kind of things.
Great. Trudy, I see you're unmuted.
I think I agree with Rich in some ways that like at least one pad site, whether it's, a business or, some sort of marketing center that you can go to and it tells the story about what's going to be happening.
Mm-hmm. No, great. Tina, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the group. At least some drawings of a tentative plan and then some sort of build out within the 5 years, I think is reasonable.
Okay. So let's explore. So I threw out that 10-year number and some of you, Rich had said, nodded your head. So some focus groups felt, we've heard everything from, Rome wasn't built in a day. They're waiting to wait forever. Others had said, at the 10-year mark, without knowing, land use requirements by the state, that at 10 years, regardless, we should really re-review the master plan. Others have said, if, maybe at 10 years, you could do something else. And again, others have said, you can't rush perfection and the city should never abandon its vision. So any thoughts, maybe on that magical 10-year number, what should occur?
I think with a 10-year, we should be able to see where we heading on a much longer time frame. Mm-hmm. I think on the 10-year, if there's for example, the JCPenney parking lot is the one that's left undone or something like that, but at least we know exactly what's going to happen there based on the plan. It's not because you had a good point with the Crown. It's it's per project, it's per area, but I think the Crown project did an excellent job of picking the kind of like the first I think there's 2 apartments or something like that, and the Harris Theater, and then let the gym to be open, and then the small stores to be open as well, while everything else are being developed. So the traffic started to go there, and then there were, like Trudy would said, there was a stopping point where there's a developer exhibitions that they're telling the story of what's going to happen, and hey, started introducing what kind of development that's coming up. So I think on a 10-year, similar with the Crown, that I would think that way. Versus
so let me paraphrase, Rich, and then we can see if the rest of the panel agrees. What I'm inferring from you is that if at 10 years there's been significant evidence of traction and progress, patience should really rule out. Is that sort of where you're going?
Yeah.
So let's flip it. What if we had something start within 3 years, something but in the succeeding 7 years, there really wasn't much progress. What would you say then at the 10-year mark? Is it, I guess where I'm going is, if we re-review the master plan, which I'm assuming, you would advocate, is it really to re-review the overall vision or re-review the elements that help create that vision?
I would review the elements that could recreate that vision.
Okay. Trudy, Tina, any thoughts?
I was thinking that if there's traction and things are moving along, similar to the Crown development, during each development phase, I think it would behoove the city to again review the master plan as part of each development and say this is where we're at, and this how the new development matches that or changes. And I think similar to the Shady Grove or the Great Seneca Science Center, it had certain milestones that had to be met at certain times. And I think those always need to be reviewed 10 years or so because things change.
Oh, I gotcha. Tina, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, in 10 years, there could be a different need. I know we identified that it may be housing. If there's a different need, then you may need to reevaluate those elements, but to stay true to the vision of Gaithersburg and what Gaithersburg really is. And I think we talked a lot about the diversity. Then the plan should reflect that, should be, so specific to Gaithersburg that you don't want to change from that vision. But the elements in 10 years may be different. So that may be where you take a look at, well, do we need all these houses? Could we go a different route with that instead? And to see growth, like Trudy said, just to continue to see growth in milestones being hit, I think will keep you on track without having the need to change too much.
So building upon sort of what your very pragmatic answer, which I appreciate. So as the structure of this master plan, as we mentioned, we're not doing a design plan. How important, so what I'm hearing from the group is, a strong vision, overall guiding vision is important for this master plan. But do you see the necessity for potentially a lot of flexibility within the elements that help create that overall vision? So we're not necessarily, to Tina's point, pigeonholed on a certain path that at 10 years, we may have to completely abandon. What do you think the role of building in, some, lack of a better term, wiggle room into the master plan is as it relates to housing and jobs? Or do you think, no, at this stage, it should be very clear cut?
No, I think there's got to be a wiggle room to it.
Yeah, I agree. You got to have wiggle room. I mean, look at the public health emergency. We didn't anticipate that so many small businesses, having to shutter their doors and things like that. I think just this experience we've gone through in the last 8 months is going to require us to have some wiggle room and flexibility.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. A question, because we're a little over an hour now. I've gone through my questions, so I've got one more, off the cuff question for the group, and then I'd like to open it up to any additional thoughts you guys have to explore anything we haven't already talked about. So I guess my question is, just from your own personal perspective, are there any traps or pitfalls related to the master plan or the redevelopment that give you pause, that have you concerned? And this can be anything that you're afraid the master plan may be too flexible, or it may be too restrictive, or that you have concerns that a potential developer may not fully understand the needs of the community. So again, I'm sort of opening it up to, we've been speaking in very positive, glowing terms about things. Here's where we do the Darth Vader trip to the dark side for a minute, just to try to identify, some of these maybe not so positive aspects that we should try to make sure we keep at the forefront.
I'm so sorry. I missed your last question.
What I was saying is, are there any aspects either to the master plan or to a redevelopment plan that we should be aware of that have you concerned? Is there a particular path or tract or, coming to the city, something that we should make sure we look out for? So we're looking for, what do you envision as pitfalls or stumbling blocks?
I think for me, just the intersections that we currently have, how the traffic, I mean, the Montgomery Village side to Montgomery Village and Russell Avenue, that's always, I always look at that as always a rush hour, Monday through Sunday. And if you add that, the traffic of the redevelopment and whatever is happening, the entrances, I think those are my main thing. And then the second part are the existing watersheds or lakes that made Lakeforest Mall. I'm hoping that the redevelopment will be able to develop upon that and keep those little lakes and
integrate them into the plan.
Integrate it to the plan. Yeah.
Gotcha. Trudy, I see you're unmuted, my friend.
I just, my concern is people losing the vision, new people moving into the area and not being aware of the vision. That's my concern is.
No, I think that's a very valid one. No.
Present and so that everybody's incorporated into it.
Oh, great. Tina, do you have any thoughts?
That's a tough question, but I do think that traffic is always an issue around here. You look at the Costco over there, and so if you have some of those bigger, companies come in rather than, well, even on weekends, it could increase traffic, and more people living there might be a traffic nightmare unless you utilize that transit center well, so that people take public transportation. But I just feel like even, with that, well, when there's a lift for people to take public transportation, I don't feel like it eases traffic any. And so that's always my concern around here.
I think that the roads are well suited for the traffic. I mean, they were built for Lakeforest, but we've definitely had added population since then. And I'm hoping that once we get past pandemic numbers, that we'll see how much of an improvement of that area is because of the Watkins Mill interchange.
Yeah,
that's my hope.
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, we got it now. We don't know because we don't have the traffic like we used to. But you do see a huge increase over there at the Rio, huge, and it's sometimes a little chaotic.
It did.
So I have asked you guys a lot of questions, and we're basically almost an hour and 15 minutes in. We've talked about a lot of different things, a lot of different facets, because through the flow of this conversation, any new thoughts you guys have, anything, you'd like to bring up that, something somebody else said, triggered a thought, or something you hadn't pondered as we went down a road, has subtly struck you. So again, I'm going to open up the floor, for any other thoughts you guys have.
Rob, I wanted to piggyback on what Trudy said earlier, losing the vision. As the new families or new individuals moving into the area. If there's a way that the city can have that vision in paper that they can share with all of the real estate offices, apartments, developments, and all that stuff, and communicate that to everyone that's coming in, or moving in, or looking to move into the area, that this is Gaithersburg, and this is the future of Gaithersburg, and what are kind of like what sets in the plan. I think that, because I'm thinking about that, because when a newcomer coming in and it's like, oh my God, what the heck is going on there? They could say it's an eyesore, that it's leading to nowhere. But I think something to communicate that, even for the early stage of the projects.
So to your point, Rich, that you just brought up, is it important to the panel that this redevelopment truly feel or be made clear that it is part of Gaithersburg and connected to the surrounding area? Or, as is a potential concern that it just becomes this 80-acre island unto itself and sort of loses that creates the disconnect with the surrounding area? Again, is that a concern to anyone?
I think it is. I think it needs to be part of the Gaithersburg community. While you have, the different sections, Kentlands, Crown, Rio, they kind of still feel incorporated into the city. And I think it's important to keep that aspect and not have it just be an island somewhere.
An empty parking spaces,
Yeah.
with a building in the middle.
Yeah. with some flags.
With different yellow, red, I think, and blue.
I think it's good that a lot of development, that the cities asked the developer to make sure that they include the Gaithersburg logo or thing on their main signs, so that people do know that it is a part of Gaithersburg. I'm not sure how you keep the vision unless you have videos. I mean, we certainly have many documents, master plans, but when people are moving in, their key thing is, where if they have children, where their kids are going to go to school and things like that. It is a difficult thing to keep people involved civically, so with the city.
But I think a lot of the statements you guys have made just in the design, I think can help maintain that vision, because again, what you folks have described is not, basically, a strip mall with some residential around it. So the diversity and amenities you guys discuss, the diversity in job sectors and job types and housing types, that creates its own unique, potentially, sense of place that may help keep alive the greater vision. I think, from what you guys were saying, to paraphrase, the stagnation is where, that danger of losing the vision, as long as there continues to be progress or traction working towards the ultimate goal, it still may be there.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. I've gotten pretty good with these focus groups at paraphrasing, so I haven't been called. I don't think I've really missed one yet. But so what else do you guys have to think? Again, I've thrown a lot of stuff at you today in a short amount of time.
What's the vision of the city time period, and what's the vision of the current contract purchasers?
There is no current contract purchaser. WRS over a year ago purchased the core. We had a focus group meeting, in fact, yesterday with the various mall owners. And, to Trudy's greater question with the timeline, if there's no other questions, I will start moving to the end where I'll wrap up, tell you guys about next steps and all that other stuff. So I just want to make sure before we start winding this up that, we haven't left a stone unturned that you guys would like to explore.
You know, I was just, I was sitting here talking about it and the vision and the pillars of Gaithersburg and all that. It's not that far from Old Town, and so if there, and I'm guessing this is probably county property as well, but if there's a way to make from the Lakeforest area, especially if it's mixed use property, um, to have it walkable or bikeable just to Old Town, just to connect the two, to keep it connected, because you know you're in a unique position over there where it's not as far away as the Rio or the Crown or the Kentlands, where you can have that connection to City Hall or even the Old Town area. I think that's important, especially with you know, the train stop right there and the mark and all that. So if there's a way to incorporate that as part of, you know, transit, not by car all the time.
I got you. So Tina, building off that, one of the things expressed by some of the focus groups and panels that we've met with, to your point, do you guys see a role using that 3 to 5 year window, a potential role for public sector investment, be it federal government, you know, because Lake Forest Mall is an opportunity zone, state involvement because it's an enterprise zone, county involvement, or city investment? Do you see a government agency entity having a role in helping get this jump started?
Definitely. I think if, I think enhancing Odenhall Avenue walkability, you know, there's pretty good connectivity on Russell Avenue if you're a middle bicyclist to ride Russell Avenue into Old Town, and there's a great pathway that goes from Odenhall Avenue parallel to Summit and Goshen. But getting to those points is somewhat difficult. It's not difficult, it's challenging. But with the transit center, something to enhance Odenhall, Lost Knife, and the transit area, I think would really assist that kind of connectivity that Tina's suggesting for getting into the Old Town area.
Yeah, and if it enhances it, you know, and if it helps it to bring in some of the state, federal, and county governments, then sure. But if they're going to have so much input into it that it becomes, you know, a hindrance and it delays, then I would say no.
That's a safe statement. Rich, any thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If it's gonna if it's gonna block a lot of continuity of the project, then perhaps, you know, take a second thought of that. And in point of connecting also the Old Town to Lake Forest Mall, there could be some design that reflects Old Town, and perhaps there's a 1 or 2 trolleys that can take people back and forth, just like Bethesda trolley. Like they have a small bus that's, I think it was up Bethesda that's that put it up from the metro. They pick up whoever is gonna be just strolling around Bethesda and take them to the next major destination in Bethesda. So it's kind of connecting the whole city easier for other people, especially a family with small kids that is running around or things like that for safety. So I think something like that would also connect the two and make it easier. And bike path, I think the city's been doing pretty good on updating and putting together the bike path all over the place.
So again, to paraphrase the panel does have a sense that direct government investment may be a necessary element to make this redevelopment and achieve the vision work. Is that safe to say?
Yeah.
Yes, with it, I think as Tina says, if it's going to make it the process be twice as long, then perhaps we don't need that kind of.
No, I was thinking, guys, more along the lines, that 3 year to 5 year time frame, that if the market itself is not bearing out this, is that really the time for the government to potentially step in and fund, maybe some of these other actions that at least show traction moving towards the plan?
I would say yeah, without really knowing how that works. It just
Oh
seems
yeah, I don't think any of again, I'm throwing out a
Yeah.
hypothetical government. So I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
going to be the city or the federal government or the state. Again, we just want to sort of explore, because oftentimes here in the city of Gaithersburg, our master plans were solely based upon private sector actions. And with this, the importance of this site, the context of this site, I guess what I was really exploring is, should we, sort of retain that model, or should all government levels be prepared to help make this happen?
I mean, if you look at the vision and when we throw in those, things like connecting Old Town to Lakeforest and it crosses county lines, I think you have to consider that. And if it helps the project, then yeah, I think that's the way to go.
If it will speed up some approvals on the permits, then but yeah,
Probably going to slow it down going to government.
then it's too. Was that?
Hey, you're talking to government employees here, so let's not cast a broad net there, my friends.
Okay, scratch that.
It's, outside of the people you're talking to, I get you.
Right.
So again, folks, we're approaching 3:30. Anything else? Anything we haven't talked about again that struck you, or any parting thoughts as we begin to wind this down?
I just appreciate, having the open dialogue with the community members. You guys probably had this before, but being virtual, it's more accessible. So I appreciate the dedicated time and the number of time slots, because sometimes that's part of the problem too, is, there may be a meeting that you just cannot make. So having multiple time slots and having input into this is, I appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
And I really am very impressed with all the documentation that you have, the videos and the plans or comparisons of what certain development could look like was great.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the time that you've given to everybody, and I just hope that there's more people that attends the conversation, because we want them to.
We're hoping there, my friend. So it's a nice transition. You threw me a softball to help start leading towards wrapping this up. To let you know what's going on, basically our whole engagement strategy ends next Friday. So, we will have, I think our last focus group meeting is next Wednesday. We have tentatively scheduled, 3 more public workshops next Thursday, but candidly, I think between the 3 sessions, we've had 2 people register, so we're going to play that one by ear. So the next step after this, once the engagement shuts down, a date for everybody to remember, December 14th, we will be conducting a joint work session with our mayor and council and our planning commission, where we're going to be presenting all the findings of all of our various engagement activities. So we're going to be talking about these public workshops, all the various focus groups. To make you aware, we mailed out 7,000 paper surveys to every residential unit within a half mile of Lakeforest Mall. We had our online survey. So we're going to be presenting all the various findings to the council and the planning commission. And further, what our goal is, staff may be making recommendations about, what this vision and elements should be in the master plan. And we're really seeking guidance from the planning commission and council on, what direction do they want us to take this master plan? Typically work sessions, do allow, public comments. So there's going to be another opportunity to be engaged. Following that work session, we're going to begin then drafting the document. We are hoping the state requires, when you have a draft document that's ready, that it's put out for 60 days for public comment. We are hoping that will begin either late February to mid-March. So then it'll be out for 60 days, yet another opportunity for engagement on the public's part. Following that 60 days, we go into a joint public hearing with both the commission and the council, and that is a public hearing process. So yet again, another ability to engage. So why do I say all that? Well, our project page will be up and running the entire time. So please go to gaithersburgmd.gov/Lakeforest. As I mentioned, the survey is available there. It will be up until noon of next Friday. So if you haven't taken it, please take it. But this project page will remain active throughout this entire process. We are expecting that we will have an adopted master plan by mid-August 2021. So we're about 9 months away. You can continue to check this for updates, status reports. When we get the draft, once we get, begin tabulating all the findings from the various surveys, we'll be posting that on this project page. So it's a living document. Don't feel that as of next Friday, you don't have to look at it again. Following this meeting, if something strikes you, either as a question or a comment, email us. We have a unique email address, lakeforestmp@gaithersburgmd.gov. Shoot us comments. We'll keep this probably active for the full 9 months too, just to track what comes in. So there, and again, to end it, the joint work session, don't forget this date, December 14th, 2020. And again, I thank you so very much. You guys were a great panel. You were engaged. You were thoughtful. You were respectful. You built off one another's comments. So that makes my job very much easier. So again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Thank you as well.
Cool.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you. So I think with that, we'll let you guys go a half hour early. How does that sound to everyone?
Great.
Good. Again, thank you, folks. Stay
Thank you.
engaged.
Bye-bye.
Okay.